Well, hello everybody, good morning, and welcome to the K. Gardner Beltline Bridge. I'm Josh Matlow, I'm our local city councillor here for Toronto St. Paul's, and I am so inspired and excited by the exuberance of the community today. We are so impressed by the turnout of local residents who not only remember the horses as they were in the 90s, but love this community, love this city, and are here to celebrate this iconic landmark in the heart of the city of Toronto that people throughout our city and beyond will see every day, knowing that this is a special part of our city and a special part of our story. I want to, on behalf of our community, I want to thank our partners, the City of Toronto, and most importantly, the Midtown Young BIA that took such, that took such leadership. Our Midtown Young BIA is both part of the, I think, this renaissance, this excitement that we see along the business strip to support our local businesses and their success, but they're also part of the success and the vibrancy of our local community, and we appreciate the work that they're doing every day, including this initiative. And I want to welcome you to the official unveiling of the Iron Horse 2019. Now, the Iron Horse is a direct reference to the story of the Beltline in the late 1800s. It's also good not to drop large scissors. In the late 1800s, there was this idea amongst a group of people downtown that eventually there would be suburban development in Midtown Toronto, or now we call Midtown Toronto. Obviously, they were out to lunch. There's been no development in the area at all. But they were before their time. And they created the Beltline Railway that later was the Grand Trunk and then CP. But they, for years there was this idea that this area, once referred to as the Toronto Highlands, would grow into a beautiful community above what was referred to as Spring Valley. And the Beltline Bridge is not only part of the history of this community, but it also is what we love and use every day as a recreational trail. It could have been simply the extension of a few people's backyards, but now it's the backyard of the entire community, where we walk, we run, we see friends, and we take a little break from the busy life around us. The Iron Horses are, I think, a symbol of the Beltline itself, but also the strength of this community and the landmark that it represents that will be here for many years to come. In future years, you will see an extension of this project, along with Robert's remarkable work of the Iron Horse 2019. We've also begun an initiative that will become a next phase of identifying some of the lost stations along the Beltline. And you will see certain platforms and places along the Beltline that you can have a rest and learn about the community and the history of this area. So, on behalf again of all of us, we are so grateful to Robert Strachan, the Midtown BIA, and the City of Toronto for being remarkable partners in the success, and I think we can very clearly call this the success of this beautiful, beautiful work. Now, without further ado, I'd like to invite my partner and friend and colleague, Mayor John Tory, to say a few words about the Iron Horse and the community. Thank you very much.
Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and may I acknowledge how pleasant it is to be here with Josh Matlow, the local councillor. You know, I think it's obvious to people who look at the news, we don't always agree on everything, but I tell you one thing we always agree on is that he fights very hard for this part of the city, and it is a part of the city that's very important to me. I grew up in what I call North Toronto, and this is sort of getting there now. I mean, people consider anybody who goes north of St. Clair, thinks nowadays that that's far to the north, and we all know that it isn't. I think downtown's pretty far to the south. But and Josh Matlow, well, before I get to him, I want to acknowledge that Carolyn Bennett, the Honourable Carolyn Bennett, is here. I'm very pleased that she's back in the cabinet of the government. That government has been a good partner to Toronto, and keep up the good work, Carolyn, on behalf of the city, because it's really helped us to build transit and to build housing and so on. Josh Matlow, he was maybe saving it. I don't want to steal his thunder or do a spoiler alert here, but he has agreed that each week he will spend at least 6 hours, and because the bridge has north and south iron horses, he'll spend at least 6 hours each week on both the north and the south side, mounted on a horse, so that people can see him at work representing Midtown, and generally add even more life to this wonderful iron horse sculpture that we're re-unveiling today. So Josh, I want to thank you for that gesture of public service that I think does go above and beyond, and it's 12 months of the year that he's going to do that. You know, I want to just say thank you to the artist. They are, that you're going to hear from the artist and the fabricator, and to the two of them I say thank you for this, and to Josh for the efforts in getting this here, and to the BIA, because I don't know that people fully recognize across the city the role that BIAs play in beautifying and bringing to life and keeping prosperous the city. And BIA was a Toronto invention that is now adopted in other cities around North America. And it is something that forges a true partnership between the city and the government and the private sector, and it keeps these businesses going, and we do it in a spirit of partnership, and it's something to be very proud of, and the Midtown BIA is an example to many. The other thing that's very important about today is we're dealing with public art here. And, you know, this, to me, this is the first event, and I was saying this a minute ago, this is the first event that we've been to since I followed through on a commitment that I made to declare 2021 in the city the year of public art. Well, what does that mean? Well, it means we're going to have things like this, conceived of by the artists, not by the politicians, that's for sure, across the city. Because part of the problem has been that public art, which brings the city to life, it's something around which people from diverse backgrounds can all come and take a look, and even if they can't speak to each other in the same language, they can enjoy something like this. And in a city that is growing fast, and we're trying to deal with that as best we can because it's very hard to deal with a successful, fast-growing city, it's so important that we continue to have places like the Beltline, but also like the Iron Horse sculptures, to have a place where people can have a moment of peace, have a moment of contemplation, share an experience together where they may not be able to speak to each other in the same language, but can stand and look at the Iron Horse sculptures and take a moment of joy from that. And so that is why we're committed to having a year in 2021 where we have public art across the city. Some of it will be permanent, some of it won't. That is the year in which we'll take Nuit Blanche right across the city, so that won't just be a downtown thing. It'll be a thing that happens downtown, Scarborough, Etobicoke, North York, and so on. So that's what today is really all about. And I can't say enough about how important this is to the well-being of a healthy city. And I can't say thank you often enough to Jennifer, and to the BIA, the staff, all the members of the BIA, and to the local councillor, as well as to Robert and Rick for actually making sure this happened today. So it's a happy occasion to be repeated many times in 2021, and let's enjoy it, and let's continue to enjoy it. And I particularly am looking forward to that first day. I think it's January the 1st, New Year's Day. That's right. On which you said you would be making your first appearance on a horse, and I think that'll be a great day for all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor Tory. I also want to recognize, along with Carolyn Bennett, our Member of Parliament, we have representatives here of the South Eglinton Ratepayers and Residents Association, and I believe the Oriole Park Association, our two neighboring communities along this section of the Beltline. And I also want to thank Mayor Tory for his invitation to be here sitting on a horse all year round. It's true that we don't always agree on everything, but what I know is that when I'm on a horse, the mayor will be right behind me. So,
which part of the horse?
So, without further ado, there have been many partners in this beautiful initiative, but the person who we are here to express our heartfelt gratitude is the artist himself, the artist and sculptor of the Iron Horse, over and over again, Mr. Robert Smockman.
Thank you all so much for coming out on this cold day. I'm going to try and keep it brief because it's cold. You can probably hear I've gotten the cold through installing the piece over the last few days. So if you can't hear me, it's because of the cold. Anyway, very quickly, the most common questions I get asked are, why did the piece go up in the first place? And then why did it come down? So as a recent graduate of OCAD 27 years ago, I wanted to do public art. And I had a feeling that I would never get a commission until I had done a commission. So I set about looking for a logical or a good site for a sculpture. and I came across this bridge, which at the time was closed off on both sides and hadn't been used for years. It was abandoned, and I thought, what a perfect pedestal for a sculpture. So then I started to try and develop the concept, the idea that I would like to use to exhibit on this bridge. And I noticed you've got Yonge Street underneath, you've got the subway to the west, you've got an old railroad bridge, as Councillor Matlow said, dating back to the late 1800s. And I thought transportation would be a fantastic theme. And then I realized that when the railroad first appeared, it was called the Iron Horse. And that led me to start thinking about horses and the importance of horses in our past. Horses were the engines that drove our civilization, took us to war, pulled carts, transportation, industry, and the horses at one time in the city were as common as cars are today. So I wanted to try and speak about that, and by bringing the horses here, it's kind of an anachronistic surprise for people, because we don't see horses other than the mounted police in the city anymore. And I wanted to, for me, public art is about creating a sense of place. And I thought that this would be a nice surprise for people moving through the city to all of a sudden see this blast from the past, if I could. So I approached the City of Toronto and I asked permission to put the piece up for 6 months at no cost to the city. They said yes. I spent 2 years knocking on doors, begging, pleading for donations. And I've actually brought the plaque, the original plaque from the original installation, which acknowledges all of the previous donors for the original piece, some of whom are here today, which is wonderful. The plaque is just beside the new plaque, which acknowledges the current project. So after 6 months, I applied for an extension of 6 months because the piece was well received, another 6 months, and we were up for 2 years. After 2 years of paying the insurance, I had to cover liability for the extent that it was up, maintaining the piece, looking after it. I decided it was no longer tenable to keep it in place. So I took it down, the horses got sold, they've scattered all over the city, and in fact there's one in the United States, there's one up in Muskoka. We keep in touch. And then, okay, so that's the original sculpture. And then 2 years ago I was approached by the city to consider putting the piece back in place permanently. And of course I said, no, I'm not interested. And the result is what's here. I have a number of thank yous to make, and I would like to thank all of you again for coming out here, Councillor Matlow, Mayor Tory. I would like to thank the original donors of the piece who had faith in me. There was no tax receipts involved. They really, out of the goodness of their hearts, supported the project. So please have a look at their names on the plaque that's there. I have to thank Hawkins Construction, for they were my installers this time, and they were absolutely superb. It was a great team of guys, and a few of them are here today to celebrate this. And then lastly, I'd like to thank Rick Baker of Plastic Glass Industries, who fabricated the original sculpture, and we've stayed in touch all this time, and he is an incredible guy, a true no problems, only solutions kind of guy. Just a pleasure to work with, and I thank him from the bottom of my heart. So thank you very much again for coming, and I hope you enjoy it for many years to come.